Hello humans, today I wanted to talk about this guy right here. This is probably the coolest, most unique multi-tool that I own, and it is absolutely certainly the oldest multi-tool that I own. So this right here is oh man, ulary? Ulary? I don't know, the name will be on the screen. Multi-tool. Let's see right here. Right up close to the camera. It is in fact a U. These are made in New York City by uh, Napanoch? I'm not entirely sure. They were a knife maker based out of New York City, who it was owned by the founder until 1919. And at which point it was bought out by Winchester, and then a year later in 1920 it was bought out by ulary. This was towards the end of their run manufacturing these and manufacturing knives for ulary. Ulary. I'm gonna go with ulary. Ulary was a small shop in New York. It was 7 Warren Street, New York City. It's actually directly across from the mayor's office, the town hall, which I think is kind of interesting. City Hall, not Town Hall. City Hall. It's directly across from City Hall, which I just think is a very interesting spot for it. It was a knife retailer, very, very similarly to I don't know, House of Knives, SMK, Smoky Mountain Knife Works, SMNK, Smoky Mountain Knife Works, all those big brands. And they made and sold, well, they didn't really make any of their own, but they sold knives. They sold some knives under their brands, the same way that Cabela's does nowadays. And for a long time, they were selling this guy and they were selling this guy's big brother. So it may be interesting if you were paying attention at the start when I mentioned this was the most unique multi-tool that I own. Because based purely off looks, this would seem to just be a rather strong slip joint knife that somebody evidently chipped and resharpened. You can see, I'll put this down here. You can see the blade shape ended up being changed on this particular model. It is beginning to rust. It's just a high carbon steel. Absolutely beautiful, in my opinion, wood with silver nickel bolsters. But the thing that makes this super cool, the patent that was actually applied for and received for this guy back in the early 1900s. I believe I saw advertisements as early as 1905 for this particular model, with rumors being out that they were potentially predating that. But from what I can confirm, they were selling them at the very least, with their patent pending, branding and all, from 1905. And here's an advertisement actually from 1908 in which they were being sold for $2.25. That's a price that I've seen a couple times pop up throughout different time periods throughout the early 1900s and 1910s, which comes out to $76.81 in 2024's money. Yeah. Still, it is kind of cool, and it's interesting to think that this is sitting price-wise higher than Victorianox Swiss Army. Many models of Victorianox Swiss Army knives are. But like I said, this is a multi-tool. I don't have all of the tools. I did buy this secondhand at an antique store, so I am missing a few of the tools, but here are the tools that I do have. This is the chisel, the wood saw, and the hook slash bottle opener. Comes in this really nice, extremely pocketable pocket sheath kind of a deal. This is for outdoors boating, outdoor activities in general. You can see the advertisements here of all the different things they thought you could do with it, right? And here it is on my field notes notebook. Like it fits very, very well in a pocket, which is super duper cool. Very portable, very, very easy to carry. If you need a lot of tools on you for whatever reason, as long as they're all fairly flat tools, this is a really usable form factor, which I think is pretty interesting. So I know some of them, the stitching has ended up coming out on them. This one here, the actual leather sheath for it is holding up quite well, which I'm very happy about. I'm way more comfortable replacing tools than I am replacing leather work, but there you go. So we have our knife here. I'm actually going to close this up again. It is a relatively thick blade, but I've done some cutting with it, and it's not bad. It's just, it is what it is. So what you end up doing is you take your tool, I'm going to use the saw, and you hook this hook right here on this pin that you can see, and then twist it into the back spring. And the actual back spring is mounted in the center on this pin right here. So the back spring is putting as much force onto this saw as it does on the blade in the open position, meaning this is actually a fairly solid, it's a fairly solid lock-in, which is quite nice. With the blade, before it was chipped and resharpened, the entire blade is hidden in there nicely, and you actually end up with this really comfortable. This one is a little bit worse for wear just because the tip is poking out a little bit, but you can actually wrap your finger around the spine of the blade, and it gives you a lot of leverage for that sawing, which is quite nice. So this is the wood saw. Unfortunately, the teeth are the same same width as the saw, which means that this is not a very efficient saw to use, but it does have an offset cutting path, which is kind of neat, and it is fairly sharp, especially for being, I don't know the year of this exact model, but again, this is somewhere over 100 years old. They were produced, like I said, from early 1900, 1905, there around until the early 1920s. I think the latest example that I saw was 1921, but I can't be 100% on that because documentation for niche things from a very long time ago can be difficult. So that's the saw. We have here our chisel. It is actually quite a nice little chisel, and something I do appreciate about this being a slip joint for a tool like a chisel is that you have a fairly solid piece of metal. Oh wow, you can actually see where it has been hammered on in the past. There's a little bit of deformation there. But you have a fairly solid piece of metal running along the length of it that interfaces with the back of your chisel, which means even if you are striking it with a hammer or a mallet, you're unlikely to do significant damage with it. To it, I should say. But yeah, nice little woodworking chisel. Does work pretty well, even just using the palm of your hands. I used it on a little bit of softwood. I didn't try any hardwoods because that felt dumb. But in a pinch, this is a chisel that will work quite well. And again, it's super duper neat. One of the most exciting things about this I'm going to get into in a minute, but first, this is a reaming tool. It's for scraping stuff out. This one here is actually the one that I imagine would be the most useful if you are out on a boat or a motorbike or something like that, because you can scrape and clean stuff. A lot of the time mechanical things fail because they get dirty or they get crap built up in them. If you're out firing guns, whatever like that, having a tool that you can scrape grime is a very useful thing. And this is one of the earlier models, actually. I just noticed this. Because you can see this has the patent applied writing on it rather than patent pending or patent approved, which is kind of cool. This tool also serves as a bottle opener. You hook, you've used a bottle opener, you hook the edge of the bottle in there and pop up. And again, because of the way this is oriented, you're actually putting force against your back spring in order to open your bottle, which just means it's very unlikely to slip out or to fail on you, which is just super duper cool. But in my opinion, the number one coolest thing about this platform, and the reason why I think that somebody, especially somebody like Ben Peters, that's not right. What is up, guys? Right? Ben, NAFSCO Ben. NAFSCO Ben, I think, should redesign and release something similar to this because these are super easy to make. Like, you literally just need, what is the thickness on this? It's one of those things where I wish I had written down all the details that I need because I had measured the thickness and it is now slipping my mind because I am excited. But can I get this in fractions of an inch? Thank you. So I'm getting like 7/64 basically, which is a super awkward number. 8/32, I guess? One-eighth. So it's right around 1/8, slightly under, but close enough to count. To 1/8. So if you got some 1/8 tool steel stock or 1/8, honestly, even mild steel stock, depending on what you're trying to make, you would be able to make your own tools very, very easily for this. And yeah, you have a 64th worth of play in there. You could get a 1/8 in there with no issue. And if you had a pouch like this that has, a couple spaces open, when it's all packed up, no, I do not care if I'm putting them back in the same spot that I took them out from. I still have, well, this is just open, 1, 2, 3 more spaces, right, that I can put, admittedly, slimmer tools in. But I can put, for example, my reaming tool over here in one of the front two, right? And they'll close up and pin nicely. So I have space for 3 more tools in here, and that'll fit nicely in my pocket. Or, again, it's fairly simple leather work, not something I would necessarily want to attempt, but if you are more design and leather work inclined than I am, stitching inclined, I should say, than I am, you could make a slightly larger version with even more holding capacity, right? Like, even completely filled, this isn't a particularly thick piece to go in my pocket. It's slimmer than my phone, but I have a Z Fold, so that's kind of a given. But what do I have on my desk that's actually like a common, well, Buck 110, because the only other things I have on my desk that are of like a common size are cassettes, of all things, and stuff that wouldn't make a good comparison. But it is actually slimmer than the Buck 110, even with the knife and tools in front of the knife in there, right? So this does fit extremely nicely in the pocket. It's very carryable. It is extremely customizable with not too much effort, and I genuinely believe that if somebody were to release a modern version of this, even a modern version of this that had a little bit bigger, maybe with a lockback in the middle, so you press down the lockback and it unlocks both sides at once potentially, or honestly, even the slip joint version, this works very, very well, and it has good, solid retention for that slip joint mechanism. So honestly, somebody making a modern version of this, don't even need to be premium, just nice, would shake the market a little bit, I believe. And it's just super duper cool how functional an early version of the multi-tool is. For comparison's sake, the multi-tool that I actually carry on me every day right now is split between these two. This is a Victorinox Hiker and a Victorinox Camper. I had the Camper in my pocket today because I was eating pork and I liked having a toothpick. Not a huge deal. It's a similar overall length. It's a little bit wider top to bottom in the handle. The Victorinoxes are compared to the ulary, but it is quite a bit slimmer, and it's a lot more, in my opinion, natural. I actually don't particularly like using the knives in a Swiss Army knife for any serious work because they're offset in the hand, right? And you can adjust for it, and it's not a big deal, but personal preference, I actually like using the knife on this multi-tool more than I like using the knives on these multi-tools here. And again, if I needed a bigger tool or a wider variety of tools, something like this where I can make my own tools is super duper practical and really cool. So yeah, it would be really nice to see a modern maker make this. I am not in a position resource-wise or just in my life right now. I don't have the connections. I don't know how to do that. But if I were to release my own model, it would probably be something along the lines of this, maybe with a lockback mechanism instead of a, ow, oh, I just broke my nail, cool. Like I said, this is super stiff. That is like the one downside of this design. But Oh yeah, it's definitely gonna work better. It is super stiff, that is the one downside of this design, but hey, for being 100 and whatever years old, it does good work, and I am quite proud of it. If you have the opportunity to pick one of these up, I would strongly recommend it. I think they're super cool. I think that if you are somebody who likes making and designing things, there's a lot of opportunity here to make and to design things because it is genuinely something that you can build on. It's a platform that is very, very easy to build on. At this point, I'm just sort of repeating myself. I think this is a super cool object. I definitely think that if you have the opportunity to pick one up, you should. And for now, stay safe and have fun out there. Peace.